In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to sharpen an image in Lightroom. Um, Most of the time when I'm editing portrait work, I will open up my image in Photoshop, tweak it a little, and I will sharpen at the end of my workflow in Photoshop. But I've seen more and more people who are only editing in Lightroom and not using Photoshop. So I'm going to do two separate tutorials. This one will be sharpening in Lightroom only, and then the second one would be opening up your image in Photoshop and sharpening there. So for those of you who are only going to work in Lightroom, sharpening your image in Lightroom, that's what we're doing here. I'm going to show you a before and after of this image. This is my straight out of camera over here, and this is my final image that I've edited in Lightroom. And right now, I have my default sharpening settings. This is what what Lightroom is set to. Under my detail panel here, automatically, this is what I have Lightroom set to. Sharpening 25, radius 1, detail 30. This is every image that I edit in Lightroom. I pretty much leave it like this. Even if I'm going to sharpen in Photoshop, I sharpen a little in Lightroom. But to show you the difference, this is zoomed in at 100%. If I had no sharpening applied, no amount, that is with nothing. And then I slide my slider to the right. I'm going to go to like 25, and you can see like a little difference. If you look at it before and after, you can see that there is a difference in sharpening. You can see more detail here, the lips, the eyes. Okay. So one way to sharpen more in Lightroom is you just apply more of the sharpening amount here. So you can push your slider further. Let's go to like 49, 50-ish, 45. You can see the difference in the images here. This is obviously a lot sharper than this. This is a nice sharp image, so you can just go with this if you want to. If you want even more intense sharpening than that, you can increase your detail slider. It's going to sharpen more the details, like the lines. But also it defines a lot of areas like bags under the eyes, fine lines. You have a lot more control in Photoshop with sharpening. So I do recommend that portrait work you do open in Photoshop and sharpen that way. But again, you can do it this way if you want. So if you look at the image, it's sharpening the entire image. It's sharpening more the center than it is the outside of the image because my radius is at 1. If I want to sharpen more the outside of the image, I can increase my radius. I'm not going to though. You can see in the hair here that it's sharpening all of this as well. So this is a nice sharp image, but there's grain in this image. I did choose to add grain to this image. So it's kind of a little too much for me because of the grain. If I reduce the grain, let me turn my grain off so you can see it without grain. Okay, so that's with no grain. So it is softer without the grain. So without the grain, I can actually push this even more. I could keep going with the sharpening here. So it's really simple. You just keep pushing your amount and your detail. You can push your radius a little if you want to. And you'll be able to see what happens. See, all these pores are defined now. It's a little too much for me. I'm going to leave my radius at 1. Okay, so here's my defaults again. I'm going to show you something else you can do as well. Okay, so another way you can increase the sharpening in your image, when you go to your basic panel here, this clarity slider defines your image more. It gives the image more clarity. So if you push your clarity, you will see that it's not a true sharpening, but it is making your image more detailed. This is way too much. I'm just showing you what it does. Now you can see this is more like high pass sharpening in Photoshop. So I don't really like this look on her. It's too much, but you can increase your clarity a little bit if you want to give your image more pop and have more defined areas like the hair, the leaves. For me, the max I'll do is like +5 for clarity for portrait work because I don't want the skin to be overdone. So if I was just sharpening in Lightroom, I would probably go a little bit more with my amount here, maybe like about that much. Okay, and then, yeah, that looks good to me. I mean, it's a lot sharper than it was over here. I push my detail a little bit more. So I think that's a good amount of sharpening for just Lightroom. Now, exporting your image. I've also seen a lot of questions about exporting your image. If I was exporting this as a JPEG file, okay, a high resolution JPEG, what I would do is I would go to File, Export, and here's my settings. I'm going to change the folder because I don't want to override the other JPEG I already have saved. So I'm going to choose the folder I want to export it to. And of course my computer's being slow because I'm doing a tutorial and it always happens that way. Okay, so I'm going to go to her folder. And yes, I have a ton of images in here to edit. Okay, I'm just going to export it to Michaela's folder. If I wanted to do this as a JPEG, I would change my file settings, image format to JPEG, and color space sRGB, and resolution 300. I would not change my resize. I don't want to change the pixel dimension. And my resolution, you have to have it at 300 dots per inch, pixels per inch for high resolution images. Do not worry about sharpen for because you already did the sharpening. And that's all you would do. You would export it that way as a JPEG. So it's exporting it as a JPEG file to that folder that I specified it to go to. Now, if I wanted to save this for web, okay, if I wanted to upload this to Facebook, for example, I'm going to export it that way for you as well. File, export, and then I will go down to image format. In Lightroom, it does not give you the option to save it as a PNG. Okay, you get JPEG, PSD, TIFF, and DNG, or the original file type, which is a DNG. So you would have to export it as a JPEG. What I would do is change my resize here, okay? Your long edge, change this dimension to 2048 pixels and change your resolution to 72 dots per inch. This is going to be your web sized image. I save all my web images as PNGs in Photoshop because PNGs display better on computers than JPEGs do. It's just how it works. So that's what I would do. Open in Photoshop and save it that way. But if you want to do it this way, that's fine. But you have to save it as a JPEG in Lightroom. It does not allow you to save it as a PNG. So long edge, 2048 pixels. Change your resolution to 72 pixels per inch. And then you export it that way, and that's it. I'm not actually going to save it because it's going to override the one I just saved. So anyway, okay, so next tutorial, I'm going to do sharpening in Photoshop, and I'm going to blow your mind. So I'm going to end this one right here, and then I will do a Photoshop sharpening video.